You're listening to the On the Bounce podcast, the show that is the ultimate source for all MLS fantasy news, tips, and everything else you need to dominate your leagues. Me, I'm JK, and I'm joined as always by my two hosts, Brady and Jarvis. Together, us three make up On the Bounce, and we're here to give you the best advice we can, along with some pretty great entertainment. Now, with all this out the way, let's jump right into today's episode. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the On the Bounce podcast. We're back here again on another Wednesday episode. We're switching things up because it's another crazy MLS double game week. We got a ton of games and a ton of teams are playing twice again. So here is the mega episode, just like last week. Now today, it's another episode where there's only two of the three boys here. Of course, me, you know who you're hearing. It's JK, Joey Furlong, and we got with me, as pretty much always, he's batting like 90% on the year. Josh Jarvis, big baby. How you doing, bub?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm piped up. I'm ready for this episode. How about you?
I'm extremely ready for some MLS this week.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's a long week. It's stretched out. We got soccer pretty much every day, so it's going to be hot. And, of course, that means we are missing our third bub, Brady, Gravy the Gaffer. He can't make it here tonight, but have no fear. Me and Jarvis, we got you plenty of info and all the info you need. So we're going to hop right into today's show. Like I mentioned before, it's the same format as last week, and if you're new around here or you didn't catch last week's episode, pretty much since we have a hectic double game week, we got games starting tonight, games Thursday, and all of those teams play twice, so we want to make sure you guys don't miss out on the key starters and all the stuff that you need to know about because you need to get in on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick it off with an MLS Week 11 recap, the previous MLS week, and then after all of that, we'll give you the hidden gems, the winners and the losers of the week, like normal, and then the ending of the show will give you the upcoming week, Week 12 of MLS action, the key matchups, the key starters, the captain's log, all that good stuff that always helps you dominate your week in MLS fantasy. So let's go ahead, kick it off real quick with a little bit of breaking news, kind of just in some MLS news. Bruce Arena this morning, Tuesday morning, got hired on the New England Revs as the brand new manager and GM role. You got any thoughts on that, Jarvis? Anything you want to mention real quick about that?
I think it's definitely big for them, and I think that we saw, when did New England's last manager get fired? Was it like
just
Thursday?
In the last week, yeah, just the last couple days.
Yeah, I mean, you saw New England and FC Cincinnati actually look like teams that knew what they were doing this week.
Literally.
So I think they're both moving in the right direction, but I mean, New England, it's kind of weird because they did play San Jose, who is on or off, so we don't really know what kind of team we got out of them on Saturday. But man, New England looked like they really had their act together and played really well. So definitely something to keep an eye on for fantasy. I mean, if New England, if Bruce Arenas comes in there and he, gets their act together, they could see some fantasy relevance, especially out of a guy like Carlos Gil, who I mean, he's played well all year as far as fantasy is concerned, but he could really take it up to the next level if they can get some coordination going on there in New England.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree completely. Just like you said, as soon as FCC fired Koch and as soon as the Revs fired their coach and their GM, they kind of cleaned house, and the fans seemed like they were really happy with it. It was like, just a fresh wind was happening. So they got a nice win. They were playing nice. So I'm right there with you. I can't wait to see how it's going to happen. I think Bruce Arena being the GM and manager would be good for that organization. I can't wait to see how it rolls out. But if you guys out there listening along, you got any thoughts on that, or if you're a Revs fan, hit us up over on Twitter at OTBounce. Let us know your thoughts on the situation, and if you think it's good or bad for the Revs, because we'd like to hear your input on that. So now let's jump right in to some MLS Week 11 recap. So we're going to start quickly going over the last week action of MLS. Not too much fantasy yet. That'll be in our next segment, the winners or the losers. So Jarvis, you want to kick it off with anything you saw last week that you want to touch on?
I mean, we just touched on New England and FCC. FC Dallas looked like they had some miscommunication in their back line this week, letting three goals in against the New York Red Bulls. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. Philly looks great again. I mean, they were able to beat Toronto.
Yeah, they're keeping their hot streak going.
For sure. Let's see. The Galaxy lost twice this week, right?
Yep, it was a rough week for them, dude.
Egg on my face for picking Ibrahimovic for my captain.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because who wouldn't have? You know what I mean? Like, you had
Right.
2 games, you got one of the better players in the MLS, and I was hyping up JDS. Like, they've been playing good, and then they just kind of laid 2 eggs. Like, they only scored. Did they only score once in those 2 games?
They did not score against New York, and
Then they scored
yeah,
just
1-3
just
against
one.
Columbus.
Yeah, that is a very rough, double game week for those LA Galaxy boys. But some other stuff, Atlanta continued their hot start. They kept 2 clean sheets. They won both games and without Barco, which a lot of people thought was going to kind of hinder them because he was kind of a big reason for them turning their season around. But it kind of looks like a man that we were dumping on early in our podcast career. Frank DeBoer is finally getting Atlanta United back to where they should be. You got guys like Pitti scoring his first MLS goal. Joseph Martinez seems to be right back on that absolute hound form that he was in last year. So that's really fun, especially for fantasy, that a big club like that's starting to turn it right back around. And really some other things, like another team that's just been crushing it, or at least as of last week, Chicago Fire.
Man, I was going to say.
In those 2 games, they won 7-0 combined in those 2 games. So they kept 2 clean sheets and just piled on the goals. We kind of called that last week. Me and Jarvis both told you 2 key guys you had to start. And if you took our advice on either of them, we're going to talk about them later. You had a great week in fantasy. They put up buckets. They were way out there balling, so that's fun to see. Pretty much that's all I got for that little recap. Not too much fantasy. Anything else you want to add?
Not really. Houston looked a little bit lost, but it was against Seattle, so nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it was, Seattle kind of getting back to their ways, but it was only 1-0, so nothing too much
Right.
firepower. But yeah, there was a lot of clean sheets kept. A lot of, some more high-scoring games like Real Salt Lake, Colorado was 3-2. You had 3 goals. Columbus randomly turning it back on against the Galaxy, so maybe they're finally coming back to fantasy relevance. Your boy Zardes popped in a goal finally in like over a month.
Time.
So shout out to him. My boy Higuain finally put one in the back of the net. Like, there was just a lot happening this week. So it's going to be a fun MLS week. And let's jump right into the Week 11 winners and losers of the week. So this is a segment, and it's going to be kind of chopped short, just like last week, so we can make sure you guys aren't here for like 2 hours. So we're going to give you 1 winner and 1 loser each from us 2 today that really just either set it off for you last week or really just kind of let you down. So Jarvis, kick it off. Who's your big winner of the week?
So my big winner is going to have to be Big Brad Guzan, Atlanta's goalkeeper, holding 2 clean sheets on the week against
Yes.
Toronto, who's a really good team, and Orlando, who isn't that bad. Like, they're pretty a fair team, and they're not like anything to write off. And he looked absolutely great back there, as well as the Atlanta backline played really well.
Yeah.
That is 4 clean sheets in a row for them.
Dude, yeah, they're bowling.
Yeah,
It's insane.
it's crazy. That, like you said, we were kind of talking bad about Frank DeBoer there at the beginning whenever they were playing absolutely horrible, but he must have figured something out, or the players figured something out. Something changed in Atlanta between like week 7 and 8, because man, they have been playing so well defensively, and I think that really is like playing no pressure. I mean, Atlanta was getting down just like, in the first half of every game there at the beginning of the year, and these players, I'm sure, felt pressured by it, and they were getting frustrated, but keeping those clean sheets, letting people that are so talented like Barco and Pitti and all, Joseph Martinez kind of play their own game. I mean, I think it's huge for Atlanta, offensively
100%.
and defensively.
Yeah, and what we were really banging on him for early is because Frank was like adamant to run that 3-back formation, and not even like wing backs, just straight up like a 3-4-3, and it just wasn't working. But like, even the worst they were letting in was just like 2 goals, so like they were still a good defense. But now, since he switched formations back and they've been playing better and feeling much more free, just like you said, 4 clean sheets in a row, and they have been working. So definitely look out for Atlanta. They are actually one of the teams that are on another double game week this week. And quickly, before I forget, since we're talking about that, let me just remind you guys out there that are listening who actually plays twice this upcoming week in fantasy. So like I said earlier, there is actually 5 teams, 5 that played twice this week. So you gotta build your lineup around all of these teams. It's pretty much a proven fact in MLS fantasy that if you got double game weeks, you have to load up on those guys that play twice. Even if they're below average guys that are only averaging 4, 5, 6 points a game, you double that, they're getting 8, 10, 12. So that's huge. You got to get it on it. So tonight, on Wednesday night, as you guys are listening, the schedule is jam-packed. Starting at 8 p.m., you got Toronto versus DC United, which is bound to be a banger. Then at 8:30, you got Houston versus Portland. 10 o'clock comes around, you got Vancouver versus Atlanta. And then 10:30 to finish it all off is Seattle versus Orlando. So tonight, you got 4 big games. And then Thursday night, tomorrow, you got LAFC versus FC Dallas. So all 10 of those clubs, 5 matches, all of those boys play twice this week. So just be sure you're keeping up with us on Twitter at OTBounce and all of those clubs that you got players from, and make sure you keep an eye on the lineups because things can get dicey over this week. You got teams that are going to be traveling far in a short window. You got teams that just played Saturday that are playing double game weeks again. Toronto, Atlanta, they're going to be playing 4 games in the last 15 days, which is just ignorant. So you definitely got to be checking out everybody's team lineups an hour before kickoff to make sure you're not lost in the sauce. And of course, that's why you stay tuned in with your boys at On The Bounce. But we're going to keep it rolling in the segments and move right on to my winner of the week, which is Nico Gaitan. Now, like I was saying earlier, if you listened to me and me, Jarvis, and Brady's last episode on The Bounce, me and Jarvis hit you with big Chicago Fire picks, and we actually made a bettable on it. Now, Jarvis picked, who was your pick? Was it the striker?
Nemanja, yeah.
Yeah, Nemanja Nikolic as his key start of the week, which was a great pick. He finished pretty high last week. What did he have? He had 18 points on the week, so he absolutely went to work, and I told you to start Nico Gaitan. Now, hopefully, you did the best of both worlds and you started them both, because Nico was the highest scorer last week with 26 points. He absolutely exploded. I was calling it. I even said he'd score 2 goals, and he scored 2 goals. So, hopefully, you guys took a page from me and Jarvis, started them both, and absolutely banked up. But Nico is definitely my big winner of the week for the obvious reason. Like I said, he was the highest scorer last week, 26 points, 2 goals. He also racked up 2 assists in the week, so he was just going off, and there's really not much else to it. Now, he did pick up an injury late in the second match, and really, you're probably not going to be playing too many people that are only playing once this week, so just let him rest, let him take a week off, and we'll talk about him again next week, I'm sure. But hopefully you got in on him, and that's definitely my huge Week 11 winner of MLS Fantasy. Now, switching it up, we're going to talk about the big losers of the week, and it's from the same team. Jarvis, kick it off. Who are these big losers we're about to talk about?
I'm about to hit you with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, boys.
Yep.
What a bad week from him. 5 total points on a double game week. Wasn't able to score at all. Picked up a yellow in that second game, and
yeah,
obviously we all know how unbelievably talented Ibrahimovic is, but it's got to be frustrating for him to an extent that, man, it seems like so many times on attack that you can see him get so frustrated because he's right there and people just can't get him the ball. A lot of times, and it's sad, but a lot of LA Galaxy without Zlatan isn't that talented of a team.
No,
he's hard carrying them for sure. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, obviously you're not going to bench him or be afraid to start him if you're really liking a matchup, but he's really got to get some more help from those guys in his attack and some of the midfielders being able to pass him the ball a little bit better. But yeah, obviously, like I said, he's so talented. It's nothing to be too terribly worried about. But yeah, big loser of the week.
Yep, terrible week on a double game week from him. And just like you were saying, it might be because Alessandrini's been hurt all season, and he's not coming back till September. But that's just one guy. I don't know if they're gonna have to make a big splash signing in the next window or something. But he definitely needs some help. And like you mentioned, that yellow card, I don't know how he didn't get a red, and maybe since it's already too late, because it is Wednesday or Tuesday night as we're talking about this, but I can't believe MLS didn't review that and give him red, because he pretty much just chokeslams Sean Johnson.
Dude, I was watching that live, and I was so confused, because it looked like at first he kind of went in to just hug him, and then he just violently grabbed his neck.
Yeah, that's just Zlatan being Zlatan.
Yeah, but it was
he's
just
literally done
come
dick
on,
stuff
man.
like that all the time.
Yeah, and then like right afterwards, the game ends because that was like in the 90th, and then like
exactly.
all like the New York coaches were like real cool with him, and he was just like laughing and stuff, and it's like, man, that's got to be like,
Oh yeah,
I don't know,
yeah, because like then him and Sean Johnson got into like a curse out match at the end of the game. It was so
Right.
weird. But yeah, keep an eye on that too, just in case lately, like late in the week, right before it kicks off, because the Galaxy don't play until Sunday night. So just in case the league office is a little late, make sure Zlatan doesn't pick up a weird red card or something like that, because he definitely could for what he did. So, keeping on the Galaxy dump train that we're giving them, my big loser of the week is Jonathan Dos Santos. He also had a terrible double game week. He only had 2 points, and he did only play once that week. He picked up a knock, and they decided to rest him. Nothing too serious on the season, but he did only put in a 2-point effort in the first game against the Columbus Crew. Now, he did only play 40 minutes. Like I said, he picked up a knock. They didn't play him much, but the reason he's still a loser for me is because he's been so consistent the last couple weeks. We've talked about him on the show over and over again, and how much he picks up these bonus points all over. He's like a bonus point machine. But last night, or not last night, of course, last week, he just really wasn't doing too much. He only completed 50 passes, and that was about it. He didn't have many tackles, he didn't have crosses, no interceptions, like nothing crazy. So hopefully his injury's not too serious and he can get back out there. And obviously that was a big blow to the Galaxy, their attack, and supplying Ibra the balls he needs in the box. So for his sake, for the Galaxy's sake, and for our fantasy sakes, let's hope JDS isn't too hurt on the season, but definitely a big loser this week. He let a lot of us down, sadly, but so did the Galaxy as a whole. So now we're going to move right into a fan favorite segment, and that is the hidden gems. We're going to get you these guys that you need to know about that are on the low. They're going to give you that crazy bang for the buck and keep rising. So Jarvis, kick it off. Who is your sneaky hidden gem of the week?
So I'm going with big Franco Escobar, a defender for
Okay.
Atlanta United. He's currently going for 6.6, which isn't too terribly cheap, but not too terribly expensive either for what the value I think you're going to get out of him.
Yeah.
A lot of the times on my hidden gems, I like to go for guys who are really, really low down, who you're not playing immediately. You're just trying to make a quick buck off of. But I am rolling out Franco Escobar this week. He played for Atlanta pretty consistently last year. I think he got like 26 or 27 appearances. But the first 3 weeks, he didn't play at all. Week 5, he got 50 minutes. Week 7, he came in the 80th and played. So they weren't obviously too big on him to start out with. And then they played him 90 minutes, week 9, all the way up until week 11, so this last game. So, the only games he's been played the full 90 in have been 4 clean sheets.
Yeah.
He's playing absolutely fantastic. He's not losing his job anytime soon. So he's definitely someone that I'm going to be rolling out this week, especially because, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I like the matchups Atlanta has this week defensively. Mm-hmm. So I'm smelling a clean sheet against Vancouver.
I like it.
So yeah, definitely someone I'm rolling out. Definitely someone that has been impressive this past month, and definitely a guy you're going to make some more money on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm right there with you, and definitely we're going to be talking about them later when we get into this upcoming week's key starters and stuff. But that Atlanta defense, we've already talked about it before on the show earlier. 4 clean sheets in a row is nothing to bat an eye at. They are absolutely clicking on all cylinders, and like Jarvis just said, they got some good matchups in this double game week, so they could be in for some more clean sheets to keep this rolling. And speaking of keeping things rolling, my hidden gem pick of the week is another defender who's been keeping it clean on his sheets. That is Chicago Fire defender Jorge Corrales. Now he is a very, very cheap value right now. He's only listed at $5.4 million, and currently he's averaging 6 points a game when he plays 90 minutes. And when he doesn't play 90, he still averages 5. So he's absolutely giving you some wild bang for your buck. And over the last 3 games that he's played for the Fire, they've kept 3 clean sheets. So he's just like the Atlanta defender Jarvis brought up. These guys are keeping clean sheets left and right. They're cheap, and it's not looking like anytime soon they're going to be losing their job. Now this week, if you do pick up Jorge, You probably aren't starting him because they only play one game and they're playing San Jose, who's kind of been on the up and up, but you never know with them yet. It's still too early in the season to tell. But I think this week, if you want to pick him up, he could be a nice switcheroo option late, or just throw him on your bench because he is so cheap, $5.4 million. If he plays good again, if they do get another clean sheet, or if he gets a goal or an assist or something, he could just get you more bank in your bankroll. So Jorge Corrales is my hidden gem of the week. I think he's a safe pick to make some solid investment on. And really, what else are you looking for in fantasy? That's the name of the game. Get your bank up and make some good picks so you keep getting your investments rolling, boys. So that'll do it for the MLS Week 11 recap. The winners, the losers, the hidden gems, all that good stuff. If you agree, disagree, or you got some other insider information for us, like I said earlier, hit us up over on Twitter at OTBounce. We'd love to hear from you guys. And a big shout out to everybody that's been listening. It's been great so far. Episode 18's rolling around, and we've just hit the 500 listener mark, so that's huge. We can't say thank you enough to everybody out there listening. And now we're going to jump right into the stuff that you all came here for. That is this week's MLS Week 12, the matchups of the week, the key starters, the captain's log, all the stuff you need to know to make sure you dominate this week. So real quick before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys one more time in case you weren't paying too much attention or you're nodding off in your cubicle. This is a big double game week. We got 5 matches. All of those teams, all 10 of them played twice this week. It's huge. And if you don't know, you got to know. You got to play all these guys. You got to max them out. You got to have 3 people from the big teams like LAFC, Toronto, Atlanta United. You got to do a ton of this stuff. So let's jump right into it, Jarvis. Let's tell them who we're thinking on some matchups of the week. Who you got? What's the big juicy matchup you're looking for this week?
So my big goosey matchup is going to be Atlanta at Vancouver.
I like it.
Like I said earlier, I'm smelling a clean sheet from Atlanta in this game. Vancouver's played fairly well. I mean, it's nothing really against them. They've been able to put in goals against teams they should, be beating. They played Philadelphia really well and got a draw. But man, Atlanta's defense looks so good right now. Like obviously 4 clean sheets in a row. And I'll get into it in the next segment, but Guzan looks absolutely on top of the world right now. He's been playing so well. Mm-hmm. And then obviously on the attack as well, Vancouver, they have a solid defense as well, but nothing that I think is going to be ready for this well put together Atlanta team now. An Atlanta team that looks like they have played soccer before.
They're playing with the juice.
All right. Yeah. I mean, they given up 2 goals to Colorado, which isn't anything crazy, but I mean, if you're giving up 2 goals to Colorado, then it's not looking too great for you.
Not at all.
I'm playing a lot of Atlanta players in this. Really for this game, I like the other matchup as well, but I like the Vancouver matchup a lot. So I'm playing, everyone on defense, on offense, anyone that you're feeling, I'm feeling for Atlanta this week.
I dig it. I'm right there with Jarvis on that. I definitely think Atlanta's a great team to, max out all 3 slots for in this double game week. And a big reason for that is because they were one of the teams last week in their double game week again, but they didn't have to travel at all last week. They stayed put right in Atlanta, so everybody's still going to be feeling fresh, even though they did play twice. But, they didn't have to do too much cross-country traveling last week. So that's definitely a big good thing, to kind of take in consideration, but I'm right there with you. I definitely think they can keep a clean sheet against Vancouver, and who knows about the Red Bulls? They've been kind of, kicking it up lately, but if they go back to their early season ways, Atlanta could be in for another back-to-back clean sheet week, which would be huge. So we'll talk about them a lot later in our starters of the week. We got some hot ones coming up in that starters of the week. But for my key matchup, it's also a game on Wednesday night, tonight, as you guys are listening, and that is Toronto FC against DC United, the very first game to kick off MLS Week 12, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Toronto kind of let us all down in that first game last week, where they played early against Atlanta United, and it kind of looked like Toronto was either disinterested, disengaged, kind of sluggish, so I don't know if the traveling took it out of them or what was happening. But, they got blanked by Atlanta United. Pozo was still looking pretty good, making his passes. But really, it was kind of weird. And then, of course, they turned it right back around in the second game. They scored some goals. They did end up not getting the win, but, they at least looked more lively. So, coming up tonight against DC United, they are back in Toronto, back at BMO Field. Their home field advantage is always big up there. And it's going to be a fun game. Really, DC United's kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde team this season. They've been one of those teams that started out crazy hot, kind of ran into a slump, and now are kind of getting right back after having a crazy week last week. So who knows? They're another team that plays twice this week, obviously. So, Wayne Rooney, you got all types of good picks from DC United. Paul Arriola scoring that banger last week for them. So who knows what's going to happen? But I'm thinking this game is going to be one of those 2-2, 3-2 type of games. Lots of goals, I think, are going to be flying. Hopefully it's better than that DC United LAFC game that we were all hyped for a couple weeks ago. But I really think that's going to be a fun game for fantasy. You should be able to get a lot of points out of it. Definitely not defensively. Don't be picking out too many DC United or Toronto guys for clean sheets, even though DC's got a good defense and back line. I really think it's going to be a 3-2, 2-2 type of game. So start your offensive boys, because I think the points are going to be flowing. So there are your two key matchups of the week to look out for in MLS Week 12. And now to jump into the big main course of the episode. That is the Fantasy Key Starters of the Week. This is a segment where me and Jarvis are going to give you 3 guys we think you got to have in your lineup. So that's 3 from each of us. So 6 big key starters that we think you need to have this week and why. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off, keep rolling with these Toronto boys. And that's a guy I've literally talked about ever since he entered the league. Say it with me, people out there listening. Alejandro Pozuelo. Pozo, he's a menace. There's really not much else to say. He's still averaging above 10 points a game. He's at 11 points a game averaging. He's got 5 goals, 6 assists on the season, which is just absolutely mean-spirited because he came into the league like week 5. So it's insane. He's been balling. Over the last double game week he played last week, like I said, that first game against Atlanta was kind of scary. He only had 3 fantasy points. Like we've been saying, they got shut out. Really not much else to say about that. But then he turned it right back around against Philly. They only scored 1 goal, but it was his, and it was a beautiful free kick. Absolutely disgusting from him. He dropped 11 in that game, played the full 90 like he has pretty much every game. Picked up a yellow card, so that kind of sucks, but it's nothing to worry about. He had a lot of bonus points with 2 bonus attacking. He had a ton of key passes, lots of crosses into the box, so he was doing his normal midfield maestro. That's what he does in MLS Fantasy. That's what he does in MLS for Toronto. So coming up again on a big double game week, I think, like I was just saying, against their first matchup against DC United, I think Toronto and Pozo have a big chance to score lots of goals. First game's at home in Toronto, and then they go on the road over to Utah for Real Salt Lake, but that's way later in the week. They actually get to play, is it Saturday? Yeah, it's Saturday, 3 o'clock, so hopefully Pozo plays a full 180 minutes, and I really don't see any reason for him not to. Toronto's going to want to get some points back after dropping 2 games in a row, and I really think he's just going to absolutely ball out this week against 2 pretty good matchups. So that's my first key starter of the week. Jarvis, who is yours?
So I've already talked about him, and I'm not going to go on too long, but big Brad Guzan. Obviously, 4 clean sheets in a row. He's only let in like 7 or 8 goals this whole year, and now, take into consideration their awful start the first month.
Yeah.
So he's been playing extremely well since week 7. We're going into week 12, so I'm feeling pretty confident about him. He is a pricey 8.3, but honestly, for the clean sheet value, I think you're going to get out of him this week. I would be very shocked if they don't at least get 1 clean sheet, and I think that's going to be Vancouver.
Yeah.
And he'll obviously get a few points in that other game, so it would not shock me if Guzan is double digits this week, and I think it's worth the value for a safe pick, a good goalkeeper who's going to be playing 2 games this week.
Yeah, and just like you were saying, he's playing 2 games. Even at that price tag, you're pretty much dividing it in 2 because he's playing twice for you.
Yeah.
So that's a safe pick all day. I love it. And moving on to my next key starter, it's another guy on Atlanta's defense. That is Miles Robinson. Now, We should have been talking about him kind of earlier in the season. He's been playing really well. He's getting up in value, so hopefully you got in on him without us talking about him. But even if you didn't, I think he's a great pick this week. Just like Jarvis's pick, Guzan, he's 8.3 million, so he's pretty pricey. But like I just said, he's playing twice this week, and I'm right there with Jarvis. I think they have a great shot at least one clean sheet. Could get two. It really depends on how Atlanta does with the traveling, because they do have to go from Vancouver on Wednesday night and then all the way back over to New York on Sunday. So we'll see what happens. Like I said earlier, just be sure you keep an eye on the team sheets when they announce the lineups. Make sure everybody in your fantasy lineup is in the real lineup. But Miles Robinson's been balling. Obviously, he's averaging 7 points a game as a defender, which is nuts. And pretty much every Atlanta guy we're talking about, you know, we're a broken record player. 4 clean sheets in a row. Not much else to talk about really, but I think you got to play 3 Atlanta guys this season, or this week on the double game week. Maybe a Pitty, a Joseph, and then 2 defenders, because you got to get on that defense while they're hot. So Miles Robinson and Guzan are both big key starters of the week for Atlanta. Jarvis, back to you. Who's another key starter for you?
So we're going to go with someone who had a really bad week this week, actually, and my boy Alberth Ellis.
Okay.
Big forward for Houston Dynamo. This week, if I am not mistaken, let me check. Since week 3, he's either assisted or scored in every game except this last week. And it was against Seattle. They were shut out. It was a bad game, but Seattle was a really good defense. Besides that game, they've been putting in like 2 goals a game pretty consistently. And, you know, Alberth obviously is getting involved in almost every goal they're scoring at this point. You know, he's either making a crazy pass forward, banging one in. So I'm pretty confident this week in his ability to get on the scoreboard here, especially in fantasy. They have 2 home games versus Portland and versus DC, who are both pretty solid teams. But obviously, the double game week works both ways. Them and DC are probably going to be kind of tired. DC, is going to have to travel down to Houston. Portland, that's a pretty big jump for them as well, traveling down to Houston. So I definitely think they're going to have the advantages in these games, and I think that their offense is going to be able to overpower both of these teams, and they're going to be able to put a few in on each of them, and Alberth Ellis is for sure going to be involved in that. So I'm starting Alberth Ellis this week, and while he's not my captain's choice, perhaps a sneaky captain's choice if you're feeling it.
Could be the hipsters' captain choice this week.
Yeah.
We should do a hipsters segment coming up soon. Maybe we'll write that in. But I like that pick a lot. And moving on to my last key starter of the week, it's another striker from a Texas team, but this is FC Dallas's striker, and that's Jesus Ferreira. Now, we've talked about him before on the show. He's been in Hidden Gems. He's been in Starters of the Week. He's been in Winners of the Week. So this is a guy that's been going up in value and going up pretty much in real life, his stock. They've been talking about him for the Gold Cup roster. He's been getting hype all over, and that's because he's already banged in 4 MLS goals and 2 assists on 14 shots. He's playing great football. He's actually really cheap still, which is insane. He's 6.4 million, and for a guy that's been the starting striker for FC Dallas for the last couple weeks, that's just an insane amount of value out of that. So he had kind of hit a rough patch in week 9 and 10. He kind of had a Jomo week, or those 2 weeks where he only had 2 points. So sometimes if he's not scoring, he's only going to land you those 2 points. But I think this week on a double game week, he's worth the risk. He did get right back into form last week, week 11. He banged in a goal against the NYC FC team. I don't think it was the Red Bulls. I think it was New York FC. But so Jesus Ferreira is kind of getting back into that form right when the double game week is hitting. And it's weird. Me and Jarvis saw this a couple weeks ago, but FC Dallas's double game week is both against LAFC. So, MLS scheduling. I don't know what that is, but it's kind of fire. So the first game of the week, which is Thursday night, is actually in Los Angeles. And then on Sunday night, they travel back to Frisco, Texas. So I think Jesus Ferreira is in for a good week. I don't think LAFC will be able to blank them because FC Dallas does have a lot of good weapons. They got Gruzo on the wing. Ferreira's been playing well, like I've been saying. So I think he's a nice nice pick this week, and especially for a sneaky switcheroo option as a double game week. That doesn't happen too much, but they do play on Thursday. So if one of your strikers on the early double game weeks on Wednesday didn't really do too much for you, I think Jesus Ferreira could slot right in as a good switcheroo option. He's averaging 6.5 points per 90, which is big, and especially since I said, like before, he's 6.5 million, 6.4. That's big. So Jesus Ferreira, key starter of the week for me, and that does it for my key starters. Jarvis, who is your third and final key starter this week?
So I'm going to go with a guy that's seemingly been in a bit of a slump, but Kelvin Leerdam. I still believe in him. You still believe in him.
Of course.
I know you had a man crush on him there for the first 6 weeks of the season, and rightfully so. They were getting clean sheets. He was banging in goals, getting some assists, and it looked like they were absolutely unstoppable. Kelvin has hit a bit of a slump since then, but I think that's what it is. I think it's a slump, and I think he's coming out of it this week. They play at home versus Orlando City, and then away at Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is a really good team, but man, so Seattle. I think that's going to be a really good game.
Yeah.
I could see Seattle absolutely holding a clean sheet on Orlando. And, hopefully he's got 2 games. Hopefully he plays both of them and is able to get up and attack and maybe get a cheeky assist here or there. But I'm going to base this pick on, I think that Seattle is going to play really well in this first game against Orlando, and I think they have a clean sheet in them. And then I think the game against Philly is going to be just the cherry on top, maybe a few points here or there. But, I'm loving Kelvin this week, and I think he's getting himself out of the slump.
I love that pick. He's currently already in my lineup because exactly what you just said. I really think this is when Seattle starts breaking out of their funk and showing their sauce.
Yeah, let me say he scored 10 points last week, so it's a sign of the times. He had a pretty bad 2 weeks before that. It's the 2 LAFC games that were his terrible games. Other than that, he hasn't played that bad. And then he didn't play 2 weeks ago against Minnesota, but. Because people can get into that rut where people will just kind of look past him after they, -1 in week 8, just 1 in week 9, and then didn't play week 10. But he's definitely someone to be putting in your starting lineup this week. He's got some points in him. I'm feeling it.
I love it. There's not much else to say. I love it. Definitely one of those guys that are going to be a double game week savior because, like Jarvis said, he can get those goals and assists and the clean sheets, which is huge. OTB loves that around these parts. So before we jump into the last segment, which is the captain's log, just real quick, since Brady's gone, I just want to, maybe off the top of our head, Jarvis, throw some other guys out here from these double game week teams that we think are definitely some guys that either we're shying away from, like defenders or anything like that, or some guys that we just want to quickly mention that are kind of honorable mentions for key starters. So I'm going to kick it off real quick if you want to buy some time to think of something real quick.
Sure.
But some guys I'm liking that we're, glossing over because we only got 3 from each of us. Mark Anthony K from LAFC. He's averaging 7 points a game. They're playing twice, like I said, both games against Dallas. I don't think Dallas is going to be able to keep a clean sheet at all in either games against LAFC. So I think Mark Anthony K would be a great shout at 11 million. Pretty pricey for a midfielder, but like I said, he's averaging 7 points. And another one for me that I want to throw out there quickly is Memo Rodriguez, the midfielder from Houston.
Still.
Yeah, he's still under 7 mil. He's still averaging 5 points a game. He's just one of those guys that it's weird. He feels like it feels like he's a rotational guy. So just keep an eye on the lineup, make sure he's in it. But those are my 2 kind of honorable mention guys to really keep your peepers on because they could both blow up in this double game week. Any other honorable mentions you want to throw out?
I think Nagby could have a good week for Atlanta.
Yeah.
You go for 8.2, a little pricey, but a good option at that. One guy that I've been big on all year that I'm staying away from this week is Big Bill Hamid. Just on matchups. I mean, I love DC United's back line, obviously. I love Brilliant. I love Birnbaum and Bill Hamid, but they got a rough go at it with Toronto and Houston this week, so I'm going to kind of steer away from their back line for sure.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Same, some other steering away from. Speaking of defenses, we're kind of shying off of. Like I just said, I think FC Dallas boys, like Dorito Ziegler, who we've been hyped on, that's Jarvis's boy. And even like Holling said, I just don't think they're going to be able to keep a clean sheet especially twice against LAFC this week. So that's something else to look out for. And my only other honorable mention that off the top of my head I wanted to make sure we talked about on this show is Josie Altidore from Toronto.
Sure.
He came in late in the last game of the week for them, so he looks to be back to match fitness from his injury, missing the last 2 or 3 weeks. So if he plays 180 minutes against DC United and then against Real Salt Lake, he's obviously, we all know who Josie is. He's one of the better MLS top-tier strikers when he's on, and he's been on this season. So don't forget about him, and if you got any other ones, throw them out before we move on.
I think that's it for me.
All right, sweet. So moving on to the last segment, that is the Captain's Log. And if you're new, this is just a real short and sweet segment where we simply tell you who we think you got to captain this week, who we think you got to slap the armband on. So I'm going to start it off because it's a guy that I've talked about already in my key starters, and that's Alejandro Pozuelo. It's simple. He's averaging 11 points a game, which is an MLS league high for how many points per game he's dumping. And he's got 2 favorable matchups. DC United, which I think will be a pretty light of a goal fest, and then against Real Salt Lake. So that's my captain of the week for everything I've said on him all season. So Jarvis, who is your big captain's choice this week?
So you got to go with Captain Carlos Vela.
100%.
For sure, yeah. That he doesn't need anything said about him. He's probably the most skilled player in the MLS. Mm-hmm. Two games this week, both against the same team. You're giving him 180 minutes to figure out their game plan and everything. He's going to put goals in this week for sure. I will say that I think that these 2 games are going to be good games. I don't think it's going to be blowouts on LAFC's part. I think like you were talking about, Jesus could definitely put one on LAFC. I think these are going to be really like 3-2, 3-1 games. Nothing too crazy, but yeah, you can't keep Carlos out of net for 180 minutes.
No.
And yeah, he's definitely got a couple in him this week, boys. Put the captain's armband on him and rack up those points.
100%. You definitely got to go with it. Even though Pozo is averaging the most points, that's because he's only played 8 MLS games.
Yeah.
Carlos Vela is still 30 points clear as the most points for fantasy this season. So there's really not too much argument about it. He's absolutely balling. And yeah, like Jarvis said, I don't think this game's going to be blowouts by any means, but I think Carlos this week, no joke, without the armband, could probably hit 40. So he might hit you like 60 to 80 with the armband on. So I think this is a big week for him to show out on that double game week to just prove to everybody that he's miles ahead of the MLS. So
yeah,
I like
he
that
really
pick a lot.
is. And like I mean, it's such a bad thing that the MLS is doing, giving FC Dallas, and I mean, it doesn't matter the team. It's stupid that they're playing twice in 1 week. I mean,
yeah.
Carlos Vela is, in my opinion, just the best player in the MLS, like by a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, 180 minutes, if he does play both games, is just a cheat code, man. He's going to be able to figure out everything they're doing, and he's going to be able to score.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird, and I can't wait to watch it because this is going to be a big week for MLS. Like I said, you got games almost every day, so it's going to be fun to watch. I'm really excited for it. Hope you guys are too for this MLS Week 12 stuff. And moving on to the outro, that does it for all of our fantasy stuff. So hopefully you guys made it through. I know this is a longer episode, but we kind of braced you for it. But we just want to make sure these are things that we're not missing because you need to know about the double game weeks and all of that good stuff. So hopefully if you made it to the end of the episode, please be sure to drop a comment on the podcast wherever you're listening or hit us up over on Twitter at OTBounce. Let us know if you're liking this format. If you like this long 1 episode a week format, or if you like the other one that we did on the Tuesdays and the Fridays, because we'd like some input on it. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but all I know is OTB is going to be here for you to keep your MLS fantasy game strong. So moving on to the outro, real quick, Jarvis, anything else you want to add or anything we forgot? Or anything random you want to talk about before we close this bad boy out?
Give me an FCC prediction for the week at Orlando.
Okay. at Orlando, I think FCC is actually going to keep the winning ways going with interim coach Johan. And the reason I think that is because obviously Orlando's been kind of struggling lately. Dom Dwyer's kind of missed his scoring boots. They got a double game week, so it's another week where FCC plays a team that's going to be traveling and going to be kind of winded. So I think FCC is actually going to go into Orlando and they're going to come out winners 2-0. I'm smelling a big 2-0 from FCC this week. What about you?
I love it. I'm smelling a 2-1.
Okay.
I mean, Orlando, it's going to be interesting to see what they do on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks for them. I mean, they play Wednesday in Seattle.
Yeah.
And then they play.
And then all the way back across the country.
Sunday in Orlando. That's so far away. And, I mean, Seattle is such a good team. It's going to be hard for them to do anything successful against them. So they're probably going to be coming off a pretty rough game. And then they're coming down to see an FC Cincinnati that no one has any idea what to really expect from them, truthfully. I mean,
literally.
Hopefully we can get that same showing we did last week. But, it's going to be hard because it's really they're going to have one game to look at to try to see what we've been doing.
Out.
Because it's not the same thing at all, not even close. So I definitely think that FCC could go down there and take 3 points from them.
100%. And, some of the older guys that have been around FCC for a while, especially on our staff, there's a little bit of that rivalry there because Orlando's head coach, obviously we all know, is James O'Connor, who used to be Louisville City's head coach in the USL, which is obviously FCC's arch rival. So... And if you guys are listening and you're like, why the heck are these kids talking about FC Cincinnati? Well, we're me, Jarvis, and Brady. We're all three diehard FCC fans. We've been since the announcement that we were getting a franchise in the city. So that's why. And it's fun. It's fun, man. MLS has been a wild season so far. This has been a weird season for us to jump into, and we're loving it. So it's fun. But I think that will do it for episode 18 of the On the Bounce podcast. Like I said earlier, if you guys are listening to us wherever, on Podbean, over on Spotify or iTunes, a big thank you already for listening. And if you could do us one more favor, just be sure to follow us, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, do whatever you can. It would be greatly appreciated, and it helps us out a ton. So thank you again for all of that, all of you out there that are listening. It's really great. We're having a blast. But that will do it for episode 18. For me, JK, and for Josh Jarvis, Big Baby, we are out of here. We'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend, a great week, and a great MLS fantasy week. Deuces.